the postman or whoever I can.
Hi, Nadine.
Hi.
Hi, Nadine.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Tom.
Hey, Tom. Okay, now we're good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have everybody.
Everybody's here. Time for
Yeah.
a party.
Right.
Beautiful. Well, I will call the meeting to order. So thank you for attending. And Dave, also, I've been taking crank calls and having conversations. I never used to do that. So it's very sad. But we'll call it to order. And today is July the 8th, so our second meeting online on Zoom. So I'll ask to call the roll. Steve Misrock here. Larry Luckham.
Here.
Thank you. Tom Weathers.
Here.
Nadine.
Here.
Eli.
Here.
Dave.
Here.
Stan.
Here.
Chief. Chief
Here.
White, you're here. Beautiful. So we're all here. And do we have any public members, Chief? Are you seeing any non-members of the commission online?
Let me check on my participant screen. Looks like we have one attendee. Let me just double check that that's not me, since we have a Mr. Robert Sandoval who's listed as an attendee.
Okay.
Okay, Robert Sandoval, welcome. So this is a time for open time for any public expression. Robert, would you like to say something? If you unmute your chief, if you would let him speak.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
trying
oh,
to,
great.
Hi, everyone. This is Robert Sandoval.
here we go.
I'm just checking. I'm new to the community. My wife and I just moved to Centerville, and I just was curious about what the commission does, so I'm attending today. Thanks for having me.
Welcome. Thank you, Robert. Enjoy the meeting. This is our second Zoom meeting, so we're still in iteration of getting used to it. But I thank you for your presence. Okay, it's time to talk about the approval of the minutes. Eli, thank you for doing the minutes. I thought they were very concise and to the point, and I really appreciate you doing that. Are there any comments on the minutes, any additions, corrections?
There being none, I'll move to approve.
Okay,
Second.
so moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. Thank you so much, Eli. I guess we need someone to take minutes today. Is there a volunteer?
Looks like Eli again.
Eli, you want to do that again? I don't want to overuse you. You did a great job. If you're comfortable doing it, I'd love to have you do it.
I'll do it again. Thank you.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Okay, that's great. I will give an update on the Fire Foundation. We had a meeting after our last Fire Commission meeting. The total funds in the Fire Foundation is $22,683. There's actually a new member of the Fire Foundation. His name is John Chew, C-H-E-W. John is a retired accountant. I don't think he's still working. He's lived in San Rafael for many years and was actually considering joining the Fire Foundation early in the iteration and then didn't, but now would like to come back. And Jack Devlin thought he'd be a great addition. He is a retired accountant, so his accountant skills will be much appreciated on the Fire Foundation. So he was asked to join, and Fire Foundation did invite him to join, and he's now a member of the Fire Foundation, newest member. As to the crab feed, I can't give you a definite on it. We still have the date confirmed at the community center for that first Saturday in December. But we're going to talk next week at our meeting about the logistics of it and whether it still makes sense to do it. Variety of issues, people power to put it on, whether to have it all in the community center or whether to have some drive up, whether we can do it, the costs. It turns out in the past, the biggest fundraising parts of it had been the auction and the alcohol. The crab itself is sort of a break-even thing. And in fact, sometimes we've lost money on the crab because it can be very expensive when it's not available. So without the alcohol sales, the beer and wine, without the auction items at the event, it's not really going to be a moneymaker. So it's a potential problem for that. So I'll get back to you after our next meeting. I just don't know at this point. Any input or comments from people? I know people would like to have it if we can. I just don't know if it's feasible. Okay, so that's the Fire Foundation. The Historic Subcommittee, I don't have any new report. I will tell you that I'm working on another challenge coin. I've shared it with the chief. He's given me his input, and I'm going to try to put the police department all there also. I'm too focused on the fire department, but you know what? I'm sponsoring the coin, so that may be the fact. But we'll try to get an equal number of police cars and fire trucks on the coin, and recognize the duality of it. So we'll give you more information. Once the design is completed, it takes about a month or so. And when we hear later from the chief about when the Public Safety Center will actually open, that'll be great news to hear. But otherwise, I have nothing on the Historic Subcommittee. From me, there is nothing else I want to say in terms of commission reports. I should say, does anyone else have something on the Historic Subcommittee? Does anyone want to say something? No? Okay, I've lost Chief's white picture. Maybe he's just getting up for a minute. Let's get to commission reports. I have nothing else to say, except I did get in the mail. Did everybody get this from the city
Yes.
about public
Mhm.
safety and such? Good. So,
Haven't gotten it yet.
July 30th.
Yes.
Fire
Okay.
admin, most specific date.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
good. So we can talk about that later too, but it looks like the city is trying to generate interest in a variety of issues that may be necessary for a sales tax increase. I think the finances of the city are challenging, so that may be what's behind that. I don't know any inside information. Larry, anything you'd like to present to the Fire Commission today?
I don't have anything in terms of activity, but I'm going to put up on the Photo 50 website a short one-page paper out of the Michigan State University that talks about a new forest fire detection system. Forest fire detection systems are not new. They've been around for a long time. The difficulty with most of them is that they're battery powered because they're out in the wilderness, which means that forestry people have to visit those regularly to change batteries. This system uses tree movement to generate operate the detectors. So I'll put that up on the Photo 50 website for anybody that wants to look at it. And that's all I got for this go around.
Okay. That does remind me, I did ask the chief's permission, which he gave, and then David Catalanoto put on our website the first Zoom shot of our first meeting. So I don't know if anybody noticed that. Did anybody go to the San Rafael Fire Department website and look at Fire Commission?
Have not seen that yet.
No.
Okay, it's on there. And the first person that can figure out who took the screenshot, then they'll get a prize of some sort.
A challenge coin?
A challenge coin. Yes, absolutely. It'll take Sherlock Holmes to figure it out, but see if you can figure it out. Okay, Tom, anything you'd like to add in your report today?
No, not really, except I did walk over to the Public Service Center. It's almost done, and it looks beautiful. I walked around the outside. I was able to look into the bays where the fire trucks would rest. The landscaping looks good. It looks pretty done. I don't know if there's much more to do, but it looked really good. I was a little surprised. I thought there was going to be a fountain in the middle of the little courtyard there, and instead it's just kind of a bush or a tree. But maybe that's for liability and safety reasons. But if you haven't had a chance, try to walk over there or swing by, because Alton Construction did a great job. It looks beautiful, at least from the outside.
Fantastic.
That's all I would have.
Thank you, Tom. Tom, are you flying now?
No,
You're not traveling?
no. So if I have meetings with tribes, I do them with Zoom like
Okay.
this.
Okay.
Everyone's still a little hesitant to fly or to travel or even to meet face to face.
Okay. Okay. Well, glad you're here. Nadine, anything you'd like to add today?
Well, I'd like to say that I think Stan took the picture.
How did you figure that out?
Could be wrong. And I am really appreciative that we're doing this on Zoom because I too am slightly nervous about the COVID spread and, you know, the second wave. So I'm really glad that we're able to do this. And I'm hoping that at some point we'll be able to get to look at the facility together at the PSC over here. But until then, it's really nice to see your faces online.
Thank you. I feel the same way as you do. That's well said. Eli, anything you'd like to share with the commission today?
I have nothing formal to report today. Thank you.
Hey, Eli, this is Tom. Did you get appointed to the Planning Commission?
I did get appointed to the Planning Commission.
Are you
But
doing both? Or
my term wouldn't start until August. So
are you going to step down from this one?
That's to be determined. I spoke with Lindsay separately. There's nothing in the charter that prevents it. I think it's really more about my ability to make sure that I can support both responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for the moment, we're calling it we'll call it as we see it. But I think for the moment, I think I can carry out my responsibilities in both capacities.
Congratulations.
But I'm willing to take in feedback from anyone who's willing to say otherwise. I'll take in any feedback.
Great.
How about an enticement?
It's a wrap.
That looks wonderful.
I was trying to figure out the right time to share this, but I think right now is the best time.
Yeah, planning commissioners don't get those.
No,
No,
they
they
do not.
don't.
They do not. They don't get that.
Although
not
if
as
you
much
wanted to
fun.
buy your own, I could tell you how to find the badge maker, but that's another story. But
That's
congratulations. I think you can easily do both. That one I think is more time consuming.
Mm.
It is.
I've seen what's involved. I articulated. I know we're probably getting off topic here, but I did articulate my appreciation for what goes into each meeting. It's non-trivial.
Okay, congratulations, Eli. Anything else you'd like to bring up today?
No, nothing in my report today.
Okay. Dave, anything for the commission today?
So I haven't reached out to Quinn Gardner yet about the update to our social media effort and website effort. However, I did see that one of the elements of our, in terms of the safety tips around 4th of July were posted. So that was great. And
Great.
I think exactly the types of things that we're hoping to do more of seasonally. So I'll be in touch with her hopefully prior to our next meeting, and then we can see if there's some of the initial elements of that plan that we can do now, knowing that we don't want to provide a distraction from COVID or the responsibilities in the department. And then the other thing that I had was more of a question: if there have been any impacts in the future planning for facilities outside of the essential services facility, for example, Station 55. Which I knew was, that was on the agenda, and maybe it was the voter approved measure funding is secure for that, but knowing that COVID has had such an impact on municipal finances, have there been any changes in the planning in terms of upgrades to some of the existing fire stations that haven't yet been refurbished?
Good question, because I know there were plans for other stations to do minor things, not the giant rebuild. Maybe the chief can put that in his report today as to if there's been any changes in the timeline or the scope of the projects for the other stations. Can we hold that to the chief's report? It's an important
Perfect.
question. Okay,
Yeah,
great.
sounds great.
Anything else, Dave?
No, that's it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Stan, the winner of the contest was Nadine, but you took the
Hold everything,
picture.
I'll take your picture. With the arrival of this, and Dave, this is Station 55. I don't know if you knew that. That was on the cover of the flyer.
You're right.
This got me thinking about a lot of the material that's going around right now, COVID-19 specific. Cal OSHA is all over the web every day with the latest statistics and what to do with. Marin Health certainly is putting out what they can, and a lot of it is very useful. But, and the but started me thinking, what would happen, or could it happen, if we had a talk to the paramedic? Simple concept. Not everybody turns to the media when they have a question. And then the converse of that is, when it comes up on the media, it may not be the time when you have a question, and it's not answering it. It just is either Cal OSHA or the locals or whatever. What if we had a hotline where I've got a question, I want to talk about a symptom, dial a number, and it's one of ours, if it could be, because that's what they're running into every day.
Mhm.
Just a thought, throw it on the table. Doesn't have to be addressed today, but it's one of those things like, we're going to be in this for a long time. And is there anything we can do to bring out the human touch, a real voice
Mhm.
that says, yes, do this, go there, check that, no, you're okay, blah, blah, blah. That, in the simplest terms, obviously, Steve, you know, as an MD, you can't diagnose anything over the telephone, but at least the human touch might be of value. That's it. My comment.
Well, it's a very interesting idea. I mean, I like it. I think that the ability to talk to someone, I mean, we're using a lot of telemedicine now. I don't know if you've tried to access your doctor in the past few weeks, but you just can't go in. You got to call them and you get a telephone visit, and it's like this. It's a Zoom visit, basically. It's face-to-face online. Having that capability with a paramedic or some medical advice within the fire department, if you don't have your own physician especially, or if you're worried, I think it's a great idea. I don't know how to flush it out, but it has to be thought through operationally how to do it, but I like it. Any other thoughts? Anybody else in the commission?
I recall back when when we were trying to then in the pilot for getting the term, but essentially to divert a full ambulance role. I know that while we saw a benefit overall as part of the city and the entire system per se, there was a question of how budget would be allocated that, we end up, even though we're probably doing the right thing overall for our community, there's a notion of, well, how do we fund that in a way that we can get the department kind of reimbursed. So I don't know, I know I'm probably prompting Nadine on this point, but I don't know if everybody kind of recalls that. I think we want to do the right thing, but how do we make sure that money flows in the right direction?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think in March, when we had our March meeting, I'm thinking back, Matt Windrum talked about this new program where you had a nurse or a community mental health person involved. And I don't know if that program is still actively going on, Chief, or whether that's something that was put on hold because of COVID. I mean, it would be as useful during COVID as not, but based on budgets and things. Is that program still going on?
I don't believe it is at this moment. I think everything, because of the pandemic, has kind of been put in a holding pattern per se.
Yeah.
That being said, there's a lot of different, how should we say, models that are being considered. I speak to one that was implemented in Mesa, Arizona, as an example, a few years back, where the fire department contracted with the HMOs, and instead of individuals accessing the 911 system, they would have the fire department members roll out a team of 2 individuals and do a wellness check, a post-operative wellness check as an example, or the person had a chief complaint that didn't necessarily register with a need for transport, but a need for further evaluation. And so those are definitely things that can lower the demand on the EMS system from a transport and or emergency room standpoint. And so those are alternative models that exist. Community paramedicine, sometimes embedding a nurse at the dispatch center can help route the call to the right resource and at the right time and in the right manner. Where I came from, Alameda County, was just implementing something called assess and refer. And again, that was about trying to ensure that the demand on the 911 system was not immense, where you could now route individuals to basic life support care or other care that had nothing to do with accessing an emergency room and leaving, therefore, the 911 response system intact for true medical emergencies. So there's a few different models that make sense out there. Commissioner Burford, I think, what you've offered is something that, with some time and thought, may be an actual solution where people have another resource that they can have a conversation about what they're experiencing, get some guidance, but the follow-up is going to be important on that as well. What you don't want to do is make a diagnosis from afar and then find out that the individual maybe had a condition that was far worse than what was demonstrated or what was perceived by phone. And therefore the liability, situation kind of puts an agency at a position to be exposed and or a bad outcome for a patient. So I think if nothing else, this could be an opportunity to help stand up a basic life support BLS unit here within San Rafael. And I think from what I understand, we had one in the past. I'm looking at the value of implementing another one during peak periods to relieve the pressure on our real ALS units, but also use that as a means for achieving some access to those who are not really able to access ALS positions from a diversity standpoint. And so this is a way for them to get a foot in the door, learn about our system, be vetted, be evaluated as good employees, and maybe help provide a pipeline for them to be trained as ALS members that can move into the organization and create that new avenue. So I see some possibilities there. I just, I would be very cautious about the phone conversation and diagnosis. That's all.
And from the attorney perspective, I would echo that. And if we go down this path at all, we really should talk with the city attorney, Rob Epstein, on ways to limit exposure or limit liability. Because if you say something over the phone that's perceived as a medical diagnosis or recommendation and it turns out to be wrong, city's going to get sued. So I would definitely want to loop in the city attorney if we do anything like that.
Okay, good point. Just a brief story. My wife had a telephone visit with her doctor a couple weeks ago through Kaiser, and they had a nice chat and talked about things and planned some lab tests. And then my wife and I took a walk downtown, and we actually ran into the doctor wearing a mask on 4th Street. So we said hello. I recognized her with her mask on. And I said, how's it going in the clinic? And she goes, well, the hardest part is that we're just not able to see as many people in the clinic. And I'm driving myself crazy worrying if I'm missing something by talking to people online all the time, on Zoom, online. And she said, the people I've been very concerned about, I've called them in, almost all of them had something serious. And then she said to herself, geez, I'm wondering, am I missing something? And that anxiety about missing something that you would normally pick up on in the office, and you might, is very pervasive right now. So everything is pushed to the back seat, all routine care, routine management, focusing on COVID and all the stresses that entails. But we've got to bring some of that stuff back into the mix now so that we can be on top of routine stuff as well as the exotic COVID. So that is a problem. But Stan, thanks for bringing that up. That was a fertile idea, and maybe we can get something out of that. That would be great. Okay, I think we've been through the commissioner reports, and now we've reached the chief's report. Chief, is anything going on?
No, I think we covered it all. No, actually, yes, there's a few things taking place. One that I didn't get to put in the report here that just surfaced earlier this week, I'm going to skip around a little bit, is Pacific Gas and Electric has indicated that they're going to send out helo units to start inspecting their lines in the areas of San Rafael, Marinwood, and other parts within the county. I believe that may be as soon as July 15th. I've got to confirm that date, and then I'll send you an update if that's incorrect. So if you see helo units in the air, maybe a little bit lower than you may expect. There were two different types of aircraft. I think one was a Bell Howell, and I can't remember what the second one was right offhand. But they're going to go out and start trying to do everything they can to inspect the lines and ensure that they can reduce the impact of the PSPS as best they can on communities in a proactive manner, and reduce the scope of the PSPS when they do activate it. In addition, they also wanted to confirm that their goal is within 12 hours of activating the PSPS and declaring the end to have power restored back to those areas that were impacted. So just thought I'd share that. So I'm gonna, instead of going down the roster the way I normally would, the report the way I normally would, I just want to share, we have AmeriCorps crews from St. Louis, and they started here on June 15th and have been working both in San Rafael and Marinwood, taking care of quite a bit of how should we say, vegetation and fuel on roads, fire roads, adjacent to some of the homeowner residences in areas, San Rafael Hill, some areas in Marinwood, right off of Idleberry and Blackstone, I believe it is. These are very trained and talented and capable and committed folks, and we're really fortunate to have them here helping us. We've had some delays with CAL FIRE, and I'm not sure what that's stemming from at this point. Sometimes when there are actually several incidents going on within the state, those CAL FIRE Delta crews may be assigned to those incidents, thereby affecting our ability to use and take full advantage of them as a resource to take care of vegetation management needs. But the AmeriCorps crews are doing a phenomenal job, and from what I understand, they're looking to increase their numbers out here in the next week or so, post 4th of July. So look forward to seeing them continue on their work for the next couple of months. Very fortunate to have them working for us right now. I just wanted to share that, and if you looked at the report, there's a couple photographs of the crews. Quinn Gardner, our emergency manager, she actually, from what I understand, had a prior involvement as one of those AmeriCorps team members in the past, and so she knew their value, was very instrumental in ensuring that she built great relationships with those individuals, the leads, Mr. Bailey and I believe Mr. Keenan, I believe it was. Let me make sure I got that right. It's not that important, but the other individual that's the lead right now, in the absence of Mr. Bailey, Mr. Ender, they're out there and they're working hard every day. And the price point is just phenomenal. I mean, what they're charging us, you can't find that anywhere. So I'm hoping to build a great rapport with them, and hopefully we'll see them here every season. That being said, the money's from the MWPA is being spent judiciously and wisely when you bring on crews such as AmeriCorps. Also wanted to mention that in your report it spoke to, I believe, the hiring of the defensible space temporary seasonal inspection staff. And I'm happy to report that we have 6 solid individuals. Unfortunately, the 7th individual we were hoping on, who was a native of San Rafael, has opted to move in a different direction. I think she had just completed Firefighter 1 Academy and is probably trying to move more in the suppression realm than she is in the prevention realm. Although this would have been a good opportunity for her to learn, she even expressed that in her interview, she's opted not to accept the position. But we have 6 other experienced individuals, some with more experience, some with less, including a retired firefighter, a retired CHP officer, and some others who are going to go out and now serve as part of our seasonal inspection staff. We have a very aggressive target date of July 16th to get them started with their orientation and training. And that training program is going to last roughly 5 days. It's going to be a mixture of in-class training, speaking to the history of Marin, a lot of things that are specific to San Rafael, along with some actual field expectations training. So they'll be out working in pairs starting just in the next week and a half or so. So that's really something I'm looking forward to. The goal is to have them complete anywhere from 20 to 30 inspections each per day. So we're really hoping to really put a major dent in those parcels that we have not been able to get eyes on for the last several years. They're going to be a welcome addition to our ability to get out and see and get eyes on problem areas that we hadn't been able to get eyes on. And so the other component of this that is not in your report that I'll speak to briefly is something that I spoke with Local 1775. I've spoken with our vegetation management inspection staff here, city leadership, emergency management, chief, Senate, and others, just to ensure that we had the benefit and the value of our engine and truck company personnel going out into the community and doing site assessments within their districts. And so they're going to be looking at wildland-urban interface target hazards. They're going to be looking at properties that are problem properties that maybe we haven't seen because we just didn't have the capacity with 2 inspectors to get out and see these areas and really put forward the effort to try to gain compliance. And so with that, pardon me, with that, it's going to be important for those individuals to be able to document those problem parcels that they see from 3 sides. They're going to be able to take photographs, upload that information into a system called emergency reporting, and the vegetation management inspection staff will actually follow up on those parcels and look to gain compliance there. But there's an added component to that. I gave them 3 goals. One was areas where we know historically there could be a problem with wildland-urban interface, evacuation, egress, open space, defensible space challenges. The other was to actually look at residential areas of concern. But the last component was a training component, and that was the added value back to the first responders, in that they go out, they understand in their district, if they come into a cul-de-sac, for example, which house would you consider one that you would anchor and do structure protection? How would you actually position yourself? What does the terrain around that property look like? Is it in a saddle? Is it in a chute? What would you do in the way of water supply? You know, are there any swimming pools nearby? What safe refuge areas exist here so that you and or the community can get valuable information they need if you can't outrun a fire for some reason? And so those tailboard chats will also be comprised of what I call QAPs, quick action plans. So take a moment, devise a quick action plan for an area that you think is unusual that your crew should know about, and so should the other 2 shifts that normally are assigned to that station. And so that's something added this year that I think is going to gain momentum as we're able to get more personnel out to do these site assessments. But I just wanted you to be aware this is our way to force multiply and get eyes on the problem, so that as next year rolls around, we're able to prioritize effectively those areas that we think need the greatest attention sooner, based on those things and the feedback we get from those extra sets of eyes. Didn't want to take too long to explain that, but I did want to share that. It's, I think, an important part of what we're doing. And so far,
Chief, I like that. I think one of the things I was surprised about the department was how important it is to know the city when you work in the fire department.
yes.
Firefighters know neighborhoods, street names, how to get to things, where the blockages are, where streets go through and don't go through. I mean, that is very valuable information, and being out there is the only way to get it, really. You can't just read it in a book. You need to go visit.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, especially in heavy smoke conditions. It's not the time to try to learn your district. That's the wrong time. So
yeah.
The pre-fire planning and the familiarization become a really important aspect of a company officer who's newly promoted and or a new engineer who should know the district inside out to be able to maneuver the apparatus around. And everyone basically on the crew should be very familiar with and aware of what's going on in their district in that regard. So, so I think this is going to have some added value back to the first responders. As long as they have clear marching orders about what's expected and why, and the value back to them, I think we'll see that this will be something that's going to be very helpful. It won't be a full-on inspection. I got to be really clear when I say that. That's going to be left up to the defensible space temporary seasonal staff. I wouldn't want to place that workload on those individuals while they still have emergencies to respond to and other activities. So I just wanted to make sure they kind of stick and move, if you will.
Yeah, beautiful.
Couple of fires. I won't talk about those. You guys can learn about that anytime. That's not as important, I'm sure. Some of the projects that we're working on with the MWPA funding. Just as a quick recap, our core allocation for San Rafael is going to be immense. It's estimated to be approximately $4.5 million and roughly another 900,000+ for the defensible space and the local agency specific projects. And so out of that funding already, we are not able to actually get the core allocation funds. Those are going to be, I think, held over until later in the fiscal year, towards the end of the fiscal year, as a matter of fact, as they start to see how much revenue actually comes in from the tax measure later in December, and then again later in 2021. So there's only a small amount, I believe, coming out, roughly 1.1 or 1.2 million of the estimated 8.5 or 8.7 million. And that money is going to go to assist Fire Safe Marin with a lot of their public education outreach efforts, the chipper program that they have that they're looking to roll out to the Firewise communities, and some of the underserved communities also in the areas. So the bulk of that money will still be unused, but available to us later in the season, or excuse me, later in the next spring as we approach the next fire season. But that being said, we've been fortunate. We've been able to use some of the local agency and defensible space monies, and that's how we're paying for example, the 2 open space rangers that San Rafael PD is going to put in play to start going out and doing some very important work. We're going to be able to use that money to ensure that we get the onboarding of these staff that I just spoke to earlier, and maybe a couple of other positions that we know are going to be really huge and monumental in our effort to reduce risk and help us from an emergency preparedness standpoint. Several projects, I'll touch on those briefly. I also already mentioned that some of that funding goes towards the AmeriCorps and the Cal Delta crews. Fuel breaks are going to be created on fire roads in the San Pedro Ridge, Bay Hills, and Aquinas areas. Roadside clearance of evacuation routes in the San Rafael Hill, Bret Harte, and Picnic Valley areas. We'll be implementing parking boxes on select hillside areas where the community evacuation and first responder access have been historically problematic. We've already got the goats. They've been grazing for a few weeks now, so I forgot to mention them, but the goats will continue to be a very important part of our community risk reduction effort. You see them all over the place. They're doing a lot of good damage. And so I'm really appreciative of the goats. So I'm amazed at how much they just can continue to eat, though. It's unbelievable. It's like almost day and night, it seems like they're eating. So that being said, there's also some effort towards the Fire Smart Landscape and Garden at 618 B Street that's planned. Some signage, mailers, flyers, and other website-related activities. I think, Mr. Funkelsrud, you indicated briefly that you saw some of that already for the 4th of July effort. I know Quinn is inundated with a lot of other stuff right now, but it's certainly something I think she and David Catalanoto would like to see additional effort placed towards. They're just right now really working towards getting that inspection staff onboarded, among other things. And so because of that, they're probably not able to give as much time and attention to that right now, but I think at some point you'll start to see more of that information start to surface. So appreciate your patience on that.
Absolutely, thank you.
Absolutely. I think that really covers a lot of the projects that we submitted. The California Environmental Quality Act submissions have been submitted for each project, and I think we're slated to probably get approval for each one of those things. And so with that, the efforts that we're putting forward right now, they're just a glimpse of what's going to be capable. We haven't even gotten to the core allocation yet. And so that's why we're really hoping to be able to see that do a lot of work for San Rafael and the entire zone and the Marinwood community as well. We'll be using some of their allocation to assist. But I think we've got really a lot of good reasons to be optimistic about how we're going to be able to be very proactive and make a major difference in our safety footprint, thanks to the measure passing. I think I'll round it out by speaking on COVID. And, unfortunately, we all have seen the recent rise in the cases that occurred at San Quentin. I just read something earlier where apparently the governor stepped in and ensured that I guess you'd say he's the equivalent of the medical director in the prison system, was replaced with someone else. They questioned the decision that was made to transfer those inmates who are already COVID positive or potentially COVID positive to San Quentin and other prisons. And so that's created a major systemic impact for the private companies that were contracting with San Quentin, and it started to have a domino effect on some of the agencies that provide transport here in Marin County. And so with that, the concern, surfaced very quickly about, if we go into a situation where it's not just somebody that's COVID positive, but now is suffering from a respiratory distress situation, San Quentin was unable to access the resources they needed. And so they brought in an incident management team to help really put that situation back in order as quickly as they could. And I believe it's sometime this week, they expect to have an alternate care site on site there, already established with roughly 120 to 150 hospital beds and care and equipment designed to assist those individuals on site instead of having to transport them off-site out of county, which is what their initial plans were. They were, from what I understand, inundating the areas that they had original agreements with. They were looking to now move them to San Francisco, maybe to Alameda County as an example, and beyond. And so I think they've really done a pretty good job of trying to get ahead of this now that they know what they need to do and they've got a team in place at the prison. And so I'm hopeful we'll see that turn and move in the opposite direction and not continue to see the rise that we saw that went from, I believe it was 400 last week to well over 1,400, just in about a week's time. So very concerning situation there, but it's almost mirrored to some degree by what's going on here within the San Rafael and certain zip codes and certain communities here. And I have to unfortunately report to you that last night, 3 of our members were assisting an officer who was involved with a COVID positive patient. And in the process of that, our 3 members were in direct contact with that individual, and they had to make a sudden decision to come to the aid of the officer. And thereby they now have been exposed. And so we're taking isolation steps with them to ensure that those individuals will be safe and their families will be safe, and the rest of the crew members at the station they were working from will be safe. And so that's a new development just as of last night. I've contacted each one. The one I didn't get to speak with, Colin left me a message. I'll be calling him today before the day's out. Hopefully I can reach him as well. But just to offer support, thank them for what they did to assist the other public safety member that needed their assistance. And then at the same time, encourage them to just, keep optimistic and positive and think positive, because they're going to be undergoing testing in the next couple of days. And then the isolation is, I'm sure, it has a effect on your health and well-being at some point. You start second guessing a lot of things, which I'd already heard on the phone earlier, and it just, it has an impact on those members who are, suddenly find themselves in a questionable situation. So my thoughts and prayers will be with them as well.
Chief,
I'm sorry.
I have a few questions. Is
Sure.
that incident going to be in the Independent Journal so we can read about it without having to pump you for questions? Because I'm curious about it.
I don't know that it will be. I would doubt that. I'm just sharing that with you as the fire chief because you're the commission, but
Okay.
there's only so much I can speak to about it, and so I just gave you the highlights of it. It's possible that somebody might, share some other information and state, yeah, this is what we know, but I'm not sure. I won't be telling the Independent Journal, but doesn't mean they won't be reaching out to me for information, though.
Yeah, and you don't have to tell me anything I don't need to know. So,
Right.
but do we make calls to San Quentin? Do the firefighters go there on paramedic calls?
As far as I know, we're probably some of the 3rd and 4th tier responders into that area. So we probably go to cover in to other agencies who have been called into the prison before we actually get into the prison ourselves as responders. If I'm not mistaken, Southern Marin, for example, found themselves repeatedly providing transport requests for the San Quentin officials. And they had to kind of draw the line and let them understand that, hey, we're not here contracted with you. You need to go out and get your private ambulance contract for this purpose. But when it came to EMS for a 911 call, well, that's a whole different story now. So when those calls start coming in succession, it drew down on their resources, and it started to draw on the other resources that now have to fill back in for them, who can't respond to maybe calls that surface within their own community that aren't on the prison grounds.
Yeah.
So we would be in a sequence of calls depending on how many other resources were available nearby before we'd be activated to go directly to the prison.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry to hear that the firefighters were exposed. They went to the aid of a police officer who was dealing with some sort of perpetrator of some sort, and during that incident they got exposed to COVID. Is that what this story is about?
Potentially.
Something like that. Okay. So I'm done with asking questions on that. Where's AmeriCorps staying? Are they staying at our facilities? AmeriCorps?
We're at let me get this right. 519 4th Street, I believe it is.
Okay, the temporary station before 52 was built, they're staying
Yes.
at that? Okay, great. And the last thing I want to ask you about was the Public Safety Center. Do you have a time frame when that's going to be occupied and opened? And
I'm happy to report that Station 51 personnel will be moving in right at the end of the month. So they're going to get a chance to roll out, I think, effective right around July 30th or 31st.
mm-hmm.
The question mark is really going to be for administrative staff, whether or not we're going to be moving in sometime in the next 2 to 3 weeks behind that. But certainly they're going to be able to roll out and start providing service from the Public Safety Center right around the 30th or 31st of this month.
Okay, and I suspect that new building will carry the same caveats that the current stations do in terms of public visits, the public coming into the stations and such. It'll be closed to just visits, but if there's business to take care of, people will be allowed to come in there, or what's the plan?
I think the only business that they're probably allowing to come in there right now would be anyone that has something to do with ensuring the facility is ready. Whether it's like, for instance, the radio system repairs or work that need to be done, whether there's something that needs to happen for the structure itself. I don't think there'll be business per se. We don't have very many visitors here to administration, as an example, unless there's a delivery or something along those lines. Everyone's being encouraged to access our personnel remotely or by phone. And so with that, I would expect that we would continue the same thing there until such time that the pandemic or some other control mechanisms are in place that have been, moving towards our phase of returning to normalcy somehow with social distancing and or limited access to the public and or employees.
Okay, great.
Just one quick comment on that is that I think the IJ and potentially some other news media outlets certainly would be keen to cover the new center. I think the question mark is obviously this is joint fire and police, so there needs to be some level of coordination there. And then of course the unusual circumstance that we're in, I would imagine that want to come with a photographer, probably take some photos inside the building. So I'm happy to assist at any point if there's an opportunity for that. It sounds like the decision might be to wait to do something like that until more public access can be granted to the facility.
Yeah, I'm going to err on the side of caution and say that's probably their approach they'd like to take right now, but it would be probably inappropriate for me to say that's the final decision and that's what's going to occur. So I can certainly elevate that question and then, circle back to the group next time and kind of figure out what the next steps are, what timelines they're looking at for media or others who may have an interest in trying to do a story about the PSC and or get access to it to take photos and kind of help, share the grandeur of the building.
Yeah, one thing that would be certainly interesting, but could be prohibitive just in terms of a high burden to put it together, but would be a virtual opening. Everything in the COVID world has moved to that virtual element, including the meeting that we're in right now. I just throw that out there for consideration. If it looks like it would be a prolonged period of time before there could be any public visits to the building, could we ever consider doing something from a virtual perspective?
That's a great question. I'll certainly inquire about that. I got to imagine there's some areas that would probably still be off limits, but there might be some other areas that they're more than happy to share and show. This is how, the public dollars were spent, and this is the grandeur and the facility and the where the staff work and things of that nature. But I don't want to be premature and offer something that I can't deliver on. So I'll inquire and get back to you.
Okay.
Okay.
And Chief, did you want to comment on the earlier question about other facilities and the plan to refurbish or do minor construction and things? 55, 54, some other?
Yeah, well, I can't speak to whether or not there's funding still in place for those things at this point, but what I do know is that there's been conversation about, as an example, Station 54, and the fact that there's some things that designs that are put in place. There's still conversations happening with my staff and building and planning staff and others and the crews that work at Station 54 as an example, to ensure that as they design what they're designing to improve that facility, that it incorporates the feedback from those who are using the facility. And so I've gotten to look at some of the plans. I've weighed in on one or two things on those plans. But as far as the funding source, I need a little more background about that funding source and whether that funding source was allocated specifically for that reason, or whether or not that funding source was primarily general purpose funds, which, as we know right now, have some significant other challenges to spend those funds on with our steadily eroding tax reserves. So our taxes and our ability to generate revenue based on the loss of revenue. So I just don't want to be premature in that situation and say, well, yeah, they're moving full steam ahead. I do know, like I said, there's been more conversation about Station 54. There hasn't been as much about Station 55 since my arrival. But if I want to understand, Station 54 might have some specific dynamics also, like being in a floodplain where there's some challenges that could exist there that might cause that station to need attention well before Station 55 does.
Yeah. Okie dokie. Anyone else questions for the chief? Anything that you want to bring up you didn't think to bring up earlier? Any comments, anything?
Got one more.
One more.
Yes, one more. Next Tuesday, the Lions Club is going to be doing a procession, a parade, in honor of first responders and healthcare workers and law enforcement and others. And so they're going to, I think they're starting at the Dominican University, and then I don't have the route, but they're leading around like 4 or 5 of our different stations and some of the hospitals. And so the classic car procession will be even coming by here at Los Gamos right around, I think, 11:25 that morning. So looking forward to seeing that procession. I understand there used to be a car show a few years ago, but there hasn't been one in a while. So this may be the closest thing to it, huh?
How many cars are going to be driving around? Just one or lots of them?
I'm hoping at least a dozen. I don't really know.
Okay. Are they going to be giving gifts out or anything, or is it just wave and beep the horn sort of thing?
You know what? From what I understand, the Lions Club has been serving dinner to the crews on all 3 shifts. So that might be the extent of their gifts is, the meals that they're providing along with, just the acknowledgement and the procession.
Okay. That makes me think of something I hadn't thought of. Is there anything the Fire Commission can do to support the morale of the department? Either at individual stations or, is there anything that would be helpful that we could do?
I got to say that a lot of the times where I've seen morale be an issue, and I'm relatively new here, but a lot of times where I've seen, that brings up another point that I will speak to in a moment regarding the onboarding of new firefighters and the start of a new academy. I'll share that in a moment. But most of the times that seems to stem from them not feeling supported, or somehow or another them having to work excessive number of hours and be away from their families and not having the free time and just being fatigued. I'm not seeing that just yet in our organization, but I know that the pandemic is probably affecting individuals, and it does it in different ways. And I can certainly understand why. But I haven't heard of any real significant morale issues. I did hear of the cautionary, hey, if we don't hire enough, we're going to have too much mando, and now people are going to start, feeling, somehow or another, like, the city doesn't care about us, or the department, administration doesn't care. And to that end, we have 3 individuals that are tentatively scheduled to start their academy on July 23rd. So just wanted to be able to share that, because that is not in your report either. So that'll bring us, I think, right back into the 67, 68 staff member range, which hopefully we won't see a lot of strike team deployments and wildland fires this season, but reality says it may be, that we do. But, we were fortunate last year compared to some of the years before. I'm hoping we get a string of a good, number of fortunate years in a row. But I can't think of anything specific right now. But you know what? That's not probably for me to answer. I probably need to extend that question back down to my staff and ask them what do they feel like, they could use in the way of support that they think will increase the morale. And years ago, one of the fire chiefs said that, toys, get the crews some toys, and they feel, they're more upbeat. And what he meant by that was the apparatus, the equipment, the new turnout clothing, things that make them feel like you're investing in the fire department, because for so long, sometimes it doesn't feel like we're investing in the department. But you guys have done an excellent job here in supporting and investing in the department with the purchase of the fireboat as an example, and contributing to so many other things that you've done to help them feel like, hey, things are happening here. We've got, 2 new stations. You got a new public safety center. We've got new apparatus. We've got new helmets. There's been a lot going on here, and I don't want to discount how they may be feeling, but I don't see a lot of reason to have low morale at this point. That could change.
Okay, just to reminisce a little bit, every year the Fire Commission has provided a Christmas gift for the firefighters. Usually it's gift certificates to Safeway or Sprouts or the places where they normally shop for their food. So we've done that every year for the past few years. We used to pick up boxes of food and do it until Larry and I got too old to pick up the boxes, so we stopped. But then this past December, Jason Hatfield said, instead of gift certificates, I think it would be nice if the Fire Commission provided personal decontamination buckets to each of the firefighters. And so that's what we did. And Jason went out and bought the equipment, face masks, decontamination, gloves, the personal buckets, and it turned out to be prescient in the face of COVID-19. I hope people use those buckets appropriately. I can't imagine they didn't, but I think we can talk about some sort of gift either now or later in the year, where the Fire Commission has really stepped up to just show our recognition.
I appreciate it. And thank you again for all your support in that regard. And yes, that was very timely of Chief Hatfield, and for you guys to be able to support that.
Who knew? Who knew?
Yes.
Incredible. He's clairvoyant.
Yeah. Well, there's been an effort to try to reduce exposure and the byproducts of combustion and other contaminants, from affecting firefighter health and well-being. So decontamination is getting a lot more attention now than it used to, and for good reason. So.
Yeah. Good. Anyone else?
Any new public information on the Prop C, the committee, the executive director, anything along that line?
I don't have new information on that. Last I knew, there was a candidate who was applying, and he indicated that for some reason he thought they had expanded the number of folks they were giving consideration to. And I thought that was a really strange thing, because the last I had heard, they were condensing it down to like the top dozen or so. And he felt like maybe they opened it back up to the top 50. And so it just, yeah. And that was kind of surprising, because I thought there were roughly around 50 applicants. So not quite sure what that was speculation on his part, but I don't have any specifics right now about have they narrowed the field, and if so, are they down to the top 3? I don't have that information right now, unfortunately.
Sure.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. I just want to encourage people to take care of yourself. Eat some ice cream once in a while. Do the things you might not normally do, just to personally bring your spirits up. And if there's anything that anyone needs on the Fire Commission that they need from each other, from me personally or anyone, be open about it. I'm happy to hear if anybody needs some help or wants some advice or, whatever. So we're in this together, and although we can't meet physically, I love the Zoom sessions, and I'm sure we'll keep this up for another month or 2, maybe longer, who knows. And so if people have questions or concerns or whatever, just email me. I'm open. And thank you for participating.
Yes, thank you all. I appreciate it.
And we will have a challenge coin for you in the next month or 2.
All right. So I wanted to ask Eli a question real quick. How do I get this to you?
I think that is if I can say it this way, Chief White, that is a low priority issue at this point. I think we can defer that for another time. I appreciate the sentiment though.
No problem. I mean, if there's an address or something you want to send to me and I can get it to you that way, or I can, make sure that I come in like, I guess, Amazon Prime or somebody and leave it at your door. It's no problem.
I'll reach out, but I would emphasize it's
that
definitely the
reminds me
lowest
of
priority thing.
a great cartoon I saw in the New Yorker. It had a guy delivering food. He was walking up the steps and a raccoon opened the door and the raccoon says, "You can just leave it in the trash can." That was at the bottom of the steps.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, the mail's still working, Eli, so that's good. But Eli, thank you for taking notes. That's an onerous thing and I appreciate you volunteering. You're very kind.
You bet.
Okay, everybody, thank you so much. We'll see you next month or chat before. Take care.
Yeah, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Sandoval, for joining us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye.